I lost my talk, the talk you took away when I was a little girl at the Shubenacadie school. You snatched it away. I speak like you. I think like you. I create like you. I scrambled ballad about a word, my word. Two ways I talk, both ways I say. Your way is more powerful. So gentle, I offer my hand and ask, let me find my talk so I can teach you about me.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm really grateful to have you here today. My name is Lily Yumagulova. I'm a Bashkir woman from the Ural Mountains. The way we say homeland in my language is Yurfu, which means land and waters, which acknowledges the deep connection that we have to the land. So today I will just briefly introduce the program, the Preparing Our Home that brought us here today, and we'll jump right in. Preparing Our Home is a youth-led emergency preparedness and community resilience program. We've been around for about 5 years. Really grateful to have the youth leaders that are leading this program in this room with us today as part of the circle, as well as elders and seasoned emergency management professionals. It is an Indigenous science-based, land-based learning that focuses on youth leadership, intergenerational planning, capacity building, technical training, and peer mentoring. Language has been central to this program from the very beginning, so really grateful to have a dedicated circle for this, especially on the Indigenous Languages Day. We've been hosting a series of sharing circles online since the pandemic has started to really support nation-to-nation learning, so really grateful to have all of you today. Who is in the room? We have a remarkable we have about 70 participants registered today, so thank you to everyone who made it. I think the furthest away is somebody from Australia, so really grateful that you made it today if you're here with us. As well, we have somebody joining from Indonesia as well, so thank you so much for being here today. Today we're focused on the languages. The speakers that are joining us today are an exceptional group of youth, elders, and leaders, language leaders from across Turtle Island. Really grateful for your time.
English name is Mary. My spiritual name is Strong Standing Gold Eagle Woman, and I'm a Turtle Spirit, and I'm from the Crane Clan. I'd like to thank all of you, Lily, for the invitation for me to participate in your sharing circle today, along with the elders. It's a beautiful day here. I'm in Winnipeg right now. I'm in a hotel, so that's how there might be some background noise. You know, I looked at the email this morning in regards to the questions. I don't know, do you want me just to do my talk because I won't be able to stay?
Yes.
So
yes, exactly.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyhow, when I looked at the email this morning and the questions of what was to be discussed today, it is about language and resiliency, and you know, how do we prepare ourselves, you know, to climate change with the environmental, I guess, weather patterns that are taking place in our areas. But when I think about the language, I'm quite fluent in Anishinaabe when I'm from Lake Manitoba First Nation, also known as Animusi being Dog Cree. I am a grandmother and a mother to 3 children. And so anyhow, with respect to language, to us as Anishinaabe, it's something very dear to our and close to our hearts and to our way of life, because it is a language that the Shamanitu creator gave us. We were born with that language. My ancestors have had that language right from the beginning when creator put us here on earth. And it's a very beautiful language. It's a language that describes things. It's a spiritual language. It's a sacred language. And it's a language about action, you know, when we, and to connect with one another, with each other, respect the relationships, how we communicate with each other, and, you know, how we, in terms of living our daily lives. So with respect to, resilience, as Anishinaabe, we've been a very resilient people because we are still here. And considering what has happened to us, through colonization, to our people. And, we still have the language, and our elders tell us, our knowledge keepers tell us that you must maintain that language and it must be spoken because that's your true connection to your way of life. And it always goes back to, in order for our people to um, learn the language, they have to be totally immersed in the language, which involves being out on the land and being with one another and speaking to each other in our languages. And many of our young ones today don't speak the language because it has not been taught um, in our communities as a result of the residential school era. And so that was one of the reasons why some of the language is not being spoken. And our languages are threatened of being lost if we don't go back to our ways, go back to the beginning of where life began for us, which connects us totally back to the wombs of our mothers, back to the beginning of life again. And in order for us to, to be prepared for any climate change or any disasters that can occur in our world, that we must know who we are, where we came from, know our identity, and that how we are connected to the land. We have a very special relationship, I guess, to the land as Indigenous people, as Anishinaabe, or wherever we come from whichever nation we come from. And that, we have, with the water is something that's a very precious element to us. And that when we take our children out on the land, they learn and understand that, all life is sacred. The animals are sacred. The plant life is sacred. The medicines that grow on the land, these are ways, original ways that have been there for us right from the beginning of time. And that those are the very things that our people need to go back to and to learn. But as well, for our survival, for our very survival, we must know those skills of how our people lived a long time ago, and knowing, how to hunt, how to craft, but also how to pick those medicines, how to harvest those medicines in the most sacred way, which means that, we have to offer our offerings, make those offerings to the original mother, to all of us, to Creator, and giving thanks and being grateful for the day and for the things that we have been given. Because everything, that we take from the land, we have to give back. Before we can take anything, we have to offer something. And what we do is that we offer food back to the land. We offer our sacred medicine, which is tobacco that comes from the land. And we harvest it, and when we pick that tobacco, we offer our medicine, and we speak to that tobacco, giving thanks for, allowing us to use it. And that's used in prayer, and, when we make our food offerings. When we want to speak to elders, we offer that tobacco. But also, understanding the roles and the responsibilities of what each, like a woman or a man, young men and young women, they need to understand their role and their responsibility, their duty, and how they are to have those relationships, with everything that has life. We are connected to the stars, we are connected to the moon, we are connected to the earth, to water, to all life, to the animals, the medicines. So in the sky realm, we view everything as all our relations, and that we are all related, and that we are all interconnected to those ways. So if we want our languages to survive, then we must be serious about it, and we must do the things that our missions, our kukums, our grandpas, our grandmas did long ago. In our community, we're going to be starting maple sugar making, which is something that was natural, that our people did a long time ago. I watched my late grandmother make maple syrup, which is also a medicine that comes from a tree. And with those trees, the trees are our breath. We breathe, from those trees, and that we understand that that there's natural ways as well that the earth is cleansed, which could be through a forest fire, which could be through a flooding. But what is happening and occurring around the world now is that this is happening more frequently, which impacts the lives of humans. And again, it is because of we believe that it's a disconnection from being spiritually connected, and being out on the land, being with nature, and within nature and on the land are natural laws that were given to us by our great creator. And those are the laws that we are to understand and that we are to live by. And these are things that have not been very well followed by humankind. The pollution of our waters through the oil spills, through littering on the land. We are affecting and impacting our medicines, our animals. Last week, I was just out on a lake fishing, and one of our friends, he caught a fish, and when I looked at that fish was diseased. It had sores on the outer part of the fish, and that's something that that was really not common a long time ago, where you saw those types of I guess sicknesses, viruses on animals and in the water life. But again, that is being caused by the pollutants, the chemicals that are being filtered into the water. Here in our area here in Winnipeg, there was talk of poisons and different things being released into the rivers. I think it was the Assiniboine River, which again is going to pollute and poison whatever is there that is living in those waters. So these are the things that we also need to teach our young ones, that that we have to respect all life, that we have to be kind to all life, because what we do to the earth we do to ourselves. And that's a prophecy that was said by our own people, or people that lived a long time ago. And our people were very intelligent, they were very smart people, because they had vision, and through their vision and their dreams, they saw these things that were coming. And we are seeing those today, what we are experiencing and witnessing. And again, going back to our ways when we were without hydro and electricity for 14 days. We learned on how to take care of ourselves using the natural things that are there, such as we had a wood stove, and we had firewood, we melted snow. These are the things that we did when we had a power outage, and we were able to survive. So I'm just again, with the language, that is how our language is going to survive, that we have to be very active and be serious about it, and to ensure that the language survives, because the language is our identity, and that's, that's what's going to save us, and understanding and respecting all life, and that we are a resilient people, and that never to forget, and never to overstep what our elders have always taught us, and that is to acknowledge that there is a life is all sacred. So those are the things that I wanted to share with respect to preparing for the climate change and our resilience, and how we can keep our language alive, and involving our people, and speaking, when we can, where we can, and never to be ashamed to speak your language. So those are the things that I just wanted to share. And there's a lot of background noise now, so I think I could stop here. So with that, I want to thank all of you, and Dennis, thank you for sharing that song, and it's nice to see you as well. Lily, thank you for the invitation, and to everyone that's here today, I greet all of you. I say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you, and allowing me to speak here today. Miigwech.
Mary's covered a lot of the history of our communities, and we're all very similar in our, I guess, our traditional ways. And I should greet you as Oki Mistu Nitaneko Ohquin Namaki. So that's our Blackfoot language. My Blackfoot name is Medicine Pipe Woman. So I went to residential school too. I think many of us did. But the only reason I still speaking Blackfoot, understand Blackfoot, was because I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and my great-grandmother. So I'm the oldest of 10 children. I'm the only one that speaks Blackfoot of all my siblings. My children are not interested in our language, even though I keep trying to encourage them to speak Blackfoot, or at least to understand us. I think our parents at that time felt that, I know with me, as a young child, I asked her why we spoke English more than our language. And she wanted us to excel in school, in a residential school. So I had 8 years of residential school experience. But many of us, we all survived. We're all here, we're all successful. But there are many who, I guess, didn't have the supports, and because of residential schools, they went down a different path of alcoholism and not having family. Mary's covered everything. I'm very traditional. Many medicines have been passed down to me from my grandmother and my great-grandmother. So every spring, I'm almost getting ready to go picking all the roots that I need and the medicines I need, because I'm running out of medicine for people who call me now, and I have to say no because I don't have anything. I made my last brew 2 days ago, and it's mainly for flus, colds. I have a lot of different medicines that were handed down. I'm a sun dancer. I belong to a society. So does my granddaughter, Stockholm. Because she stayed with us, she understands our language somewhat, but she also became part of the Sundance, and she's now involved with the Dove Society. It's one of the societies that was lost for many years, and 2 years ago was the first time they brought it back to Siksika. And it's really beautiful to see the young people getting engaged in our traditional yearly society celebrations. But it's a year-long thing. So, and they are committed, and they all are all trying to speak Blackfoot because the elders speak Blackfoot to them, and they have to learn to understand, right? But I always am concerned about our, as Mary said, our environment, the water. But the water always cleanses itself too. But we, in our area, we try to clean up our river banks, because people throw, you'd be surprised what they throw into the river. And it's our own people that do it. And we're like, why are you doing that? You should, there are dumps, places to dispose of your garbage and tires and whatever is thrown in the river. So our family goes along the river because every spring I go picking along the banks, the river. And at the same time, we're picking up garbage along the river and piling the tires onto the banks. And then my husband brings them to our nation's, what do you call it? Recycling depot for tires and refrigerators and whatever you can find in the river. I'm so surprised, but I almost forgot about today's meeting. I'm busy sewing. I'm a seamstress. I make ribbon skirts, so I'm making one for an elder from Strathmore, and she's not native, but she really likes the ribbon skirts, so I'm making her one. So I'm already kind of like, oh, what was I supposed to do today? Do you have any questions? I mean,
Darlene, I was just wondering if you could share the role that the Blackfoot language played in healing following the disaster, and how Dancing Deer Disaster Recovery Center delivered services in Blackfoot and had Indigenous psychologists. If you could just share a little bit on that.
Yes, the 2013 flood was very devastating for some of our communities. So there was one organization which was led by social services, and we just happened to be volunteering, right? And so when we were finished, and an individual came up to us and asked us to stay on, to engage with those individuals who were affected by the flood. There were 700 homes affected by the flood. And so there was a challenge to put all the people into places where they would have a place to stay and have food and water. So we started negotiating with all the hotels in Strathmore. So we filled 3 hotels in Strathmore. So DDRC went out. We were on the ground. We went to the homes for those individuals that still had homes, but were in that area. But we're also, despite the fact that they didn't lose their homes, but they were feeling for their neighbors who lost their homes. So DDRC was a group that we worked with youth, and we started teaching language, some of our traditional ways. One was to actually make dry meat and have the children. We had 2 elders that came in and demonstrated and worked with the youth to make dry meat. So we did a lot. It was, I thought it was just for like a short time, but we were 4 years into flood recovery and helping the community members. Yeah, we had a lady, she's from the Blood Tribe. She's a psychologist, and she came up and helped all those who were in need of psychological help, and just to talk. And we still connect because she's works in her community now. So that was really helpful to have a psychologist on site, and individuals knew where she was, and we kind of moved around all the time because of space, and because we initially started DDRC at the food bank, which was a public works building. So we turned it into a food bank to provide food for those who were affected by the flood. And we got donations that we had to sort out. And so it was a lot of work, but it was rewarding to see people that weren't hesitant to come and see us.
Dream goes on. I go so Jan ya tall tick go law. Suddenly, and that's ein deal goes on. You go nail in. It just going to sneak. The channel Jan ya test. Good morning, everyone. It's really good to gather here from all over the place. Language is very important within all communities as Indigenous people, First Nations people. Language is who we are in these different communities, and language is very powerful. It's got a lot of power, and for that reason, they develop areas for us to eliminate that and speak one language, which is English. So I'm happy that I'm speaking here because English is my second language. And in order for us to stay strong in learning and teaching our language, you have to really take it seriously. I know it's forgetful. You're quick to speak English. Out of experience for myself, I do tend to do that. English is faster, quicker, and also part laziness. If you speak the language, you'll end up explaining maybe a minute more or two, explaining to your children or whoever you're talking to in the language. And that's one of the reasons why we ignore that. We jump to English real quick so that everyone understands and that we don't have to do an explanation. So therefore, keep that in mind when you're speaking to your children, grandchildren, or your families. Always remember to speak the original language at all times and make sure that you're speaking it in all areas, right from the day you get up in the morning in your home, and throughout the day, wherever you go, you have to speak the language at all times, even though the people around you are not fluent. Speak to them, let them listen to you and bring it to them at all times. That's the main goal. It's what we have to do in order for us to catch on. And I mean everything from community to work, to feeling up, going to the band office or whatever you are doing. Speak the language at all times. Let them see you do it. And you start teaching them. Let them know little things. You don't have to be totally fluent. You can speak a little bit of English and throw in your language to start off, to teach them. So, and also in communities, a lot of us have language teachers that are teaching elementary and also high school, and some in universities, and that is a good thing. So that's one of the things that keeps us strong, is that, and really practice your traditional ways, like drumming, singing. All those kind of things are very important. Introduce your children, grandchildren, your nation about the songs, and explain the lyrics that you throw in there and things like that. It's very important. And try to get them to feel that it is important to them. And if you can bring the pride in that to them, that's what you want to do. First, they have to be introduced, and they have to understand and the pride and how important it is. If they can grasp that as they go along, that's what you want to do. Because once they start finding out who they are, understanding the language, the music, it starts to bring their identity out more so than mixed identity. So therefore they become prouder, and they're going to want to learn more and more. So that's what you want to do in teaching the language, and going out in the lands, naming places where you hunt, where you pick berries, where you fish, the rivers, the lakes, all of those kind of things. They need to be addressed to them, and if you can, bring them out there and point it out to them, so that they can feel that this is our people's way, and we have been doing this since time immemorial. That kind of message is important, so that and along the way, really stress the place names in your language and things like that is important, and get, if you come across other speakers that are fluent, let them join in, speak to you in front of them in total language is very important, so that you always stay sovereign, and always stress the fact that you are your nation's people, and that you are sovereign, have been for a very long time, and that colonialism set in our area 150 to 160 years. So when you think about 160 years, that's really not that long. So stress to them that how long we have been around, and the residential school has been around since the 1860s or whatever. And that and those are the things that you want to introduce, a bit of their history, and bring out their identity in the language, because half of our people don't really know who we are, where we're coming from, and what the song is about. Is it the song about the environment? Is the song about the animals within that territory and things like that? So once they start learning all of those things, they become us again. They become part of us. So that's what you want to bring out in our children and grandchildren and our people. Again, many of our elders are elders, but they themselves have not really experienced the true sovereign history yet. So they too are also not knowledgeable in their own history and their own language and things like that. So be aware of that. And when you're teaching, teach all and everyone when you're doing that. And really stress the fact that it's not taboo to speak in public in your language anymore, like it used to be in the old days. In our language, they used to say, "Oh, quit speaking the language. There's white people coming your way." That's the way it used to be. And now I sense in my community, sometimes it's still like that. They're a little bit almost like timid to speak the language in front of foreign people. So that's what I meant about bringing their identity and being proud of who they are. Let them feel, let them know that it's okay to speak another language, your language, in front of people, and be proud of that. Let it be the first language to speak, and be proud of that. Those are the kind of things that you want to do and instill in our children and our nation. It's very important to stress that, and in everything you do, whether it's a community gathering, community workshop, or community training, everything has to be spoken in the language. And if you would like, you can also have a translator for the people that don't really understand what's going on beside you, if you don't want to explain it in English so that the people that don't speak fluent would understand that. That's very important, and really stress the fact that history from residential school, colonialism, just so that they kind of get the gist of where they're coming from. Because like I said earlier, many of us don't really know who we are, where we came from. And here we are speaking English, and many of us are still in the mindset of the colonial minds, colonial training that has been given to us since 150, 160 years here on the west side. And we naturally think and act and talk like colonial people. So it's important to give a little bit of history as to who they are, where they came from. It kind of opens up their eyes a bit once they find out exactly who they are, because many of our people don't really know in different communities what their traditions are. And so it's important to teach them exactly those kind of things in the language, and to be really resilient in the colonial intro that has been introduced to us. So always be aware of things like that. And as for emergency, I think it depends. If you have a radio station in your community or some sort, you can start off by that, introducing that, throw it out to the community, asking them what they want out of that emergency, and speak in the language what they want. A 1-800 number where it is all spoken in the language for people that are not fluent in English. They can get on, dial 1-800 or 611, whatever, so that it's all spoken in the language as to what to do in an emergency situation. So that's one thing I would suggest. It is important, and really put names on there that are there to help if you're in a situation, whether you're in a domestic violence or fire or those kind of things. It's important to understand that. To throw it out there like that is very important. And I think I will stop there. Thank you, Channel Shaw.
Hi, everybody. Absolutely. I do have to go next. And I really, I'm just honored, and I really appreciate all the words that were shared already, especially by Grant and the other two speakers. I would really like to connect with you, Grant, and all the other speakers. You can add me on Facebook under Boyce Morin, B-O-Y-C-E, Morin, M-O-R-I-N, Boyce Morin. And yeah, so yeah, nista uma nihioino, egwa nihioian, mstacy piutian, egwa igipixnamagoya nihioiwan, Negiho gigipixnamotic, nochumak, nemoshumak gipixnamotic, ntaisinimak gipixnamotic, mstahigigweo gipixnotamotic, utai pipitotatic, nemamtanitzeganich, utaminet ntihihota, ntachachkumich. So I'm also, like I said in my introduction, I'm from the Cree Nation, Plains Cree Nation, Central Saskatchewan, Big River First Nation. It's a beautiful community, got over 4,000 members. We got rolling hills, 26 lakes, we've got fields, and it's a beautiful community. I'm proud to call it home. A lot of huge construction projects are happening there. A lot of our community members got huge day school settlements, like, you know, because our schools were day schools, and all that money is coming in. And so, you know, there's just a lot of stuff happening in my community. A lot of it is good. A lot of it is not good. You know what happens, right? To marginalized, you know, oppressed people when they suddenly get a lot of money. Miss the hair, social issues. A lot of social issues can happen. So a lot of that's happening. But I'm proud to call it home. We have a lot of reserves around there. Like we have quite a few reserves in Saskatchewan. We have 7 to 4 recognized First Nations in Saskatchewan. We have, well, of course, we have Cree people. We have Dakota people. We have Dene people. We have Ojibwe, I guess Soto people, they call themselves Soto. We have Michif people. So Saskatchewan, yeah, it's a beautiful place to live. But, you know, again, it's one of the racist, most conservative provinces in Canada is Saskatchewan. I don't know what it is in Alberta or Manitoba, but anyway, so that's besides the point. But this is where I call home. And I'm very honored that my parents spoke Cree to me, my grandparents. Okay, so I tried to give you an idea of my community, right? And this is where, like, we still practice a lot of our ceremonies. We still have many ceremonies that we still practice in our community. So we do all these ceremonies in preparation of what we call the Big Lodge ceremony, which is the Sundance. And so I'm very honored that I get to be a helper in many of these ceremonies, and I can understand the elders. And it's amazing, the worldview that, you know, comes with understanding the language. For us, it's a spirit. It has a spirit. And everything has a spirit, you know, and we call that wahkuhtuin. Wahkuhtuin. Everything is related. And so the language teaches us that we have a lot of values and teachings in our words to be good ancestors in the future, to be good relatives now, to be a good human being towards other human beings. And we have rules, we have sacred laws, and we call them Weasawiona, or you're not supposed to overstep certain boundaries, right? So, and I think a lot of our young people don't know these laws, these sacred laws that our ancestors, you know, passed down to us on how to be good human beings, how to be good stewards of the land, to respect and protect Mother Earth. And but I think a lot of the speakers covered a lot already, like just beautiful words of wisdom in terms of the beauty of Indigenous languages, you know, not only in Canada, but throughout the world. And, you know, and as we know, our languages are in a state of emergency. And so, and Grant, I felt his words. Kapik squat, kapik squeak, kapik squanuawa. Speak your languages no matter where you are. It took me many years to overcome that internalized oppression, that internal oppression that happens when you're colonized, where you kind of look, you look down on yourself, I guess, your language, your culture, your people. But that's colonization. That's also due to trauma. And I'm learning a lot about trauma. You know, we actually inherit trauma from our ancestors, right? And that trauma is passed down. So you got to work on healing it and dealing with your trauma, however you can do that, through therapy, ceremonies, whatever. You got to work on that trauma. Even if you think you don't have trauma, a lot of Indigenous people, we carry trauma, right? And that's where a lot of our people, I think, are trying to deal with it through drugs and alcohol. They don't know what it is. There's a void. There's like a deep pain, but it's like internal, and they don't know. And they're trying to like deal with it through, these various ways. But yeah, in terms of emergency, I've always thought about like, if there's like ever like apocalypse or something like that, like a zombie apocalypse, we would survive as Indigenous people. Well, some of us, like some of us would, I know I would survive, because I have the knowledge. I know a lot of law. I don't have all the knowledge, but I know a lot of knowledge about being out in the land and, having that relationship with the natural world and, prayer and, our connection to the spirit realms and, but I think our language would help us, I mean, yeah, our languages did save, a lot of wars, our code talkers, so there's a lot to be proud of as Indigenous people. We have a very unique culture. I've traveled all over the world, many countries, and I love meeting the Indigenous peoples of those countries. And I go there with an open mind, open heart, and I try to go learn about who they are and their practices and their customs and their language. But we have a beautiful, especially us in Turtle Island, like Miskanaka Ski, like our Indigenous nations, like very unique. We're not all the same, and yeah, we're facing an onslaught right now, and we got to turn the tide. We got to band together, and try and come back, try to get our young people back, and the grant talked about, modernization and how the English language is so easy and it's lazy to speak English. It really is lazy, because our languages are, they're really descriptive. They have emotion, they have spirit, they're not just black and white. They're very colorful languages, our languages, and it's like going to our ceremonies, like they're hard. Like I'm gonna go to a ceremony here at 4 o'clock today. It's like you gotta go get the wood, the rocks, and you gotta, you know what I mean? It's hard work. And but it's the reward is beautiful, rather than just going to some building and sitting down and reading a book and praying. Ours is like it takes effort, it creates character, it builds your mental fortitude, like you can callous your mind to be strong by going to our ceremonies, and that teaches you, it gives you strength and dignity and pride and honor and respect and love, to work, to dedicate yourself, and so that's what I do. That's what I do every day. I speak to my children. I walk down the street. I hold my head up high, and I don't back down. I don't back down from anybody. So, and yeah, just gotta model a role, I guess. Model that role, and hopefully others will follow. Right. So, but yeah, lots has been said already. I think I'm going to end it there. I really appreciate the honor and the invitation to be a part of this amazing talk. And please add me on social media if you want to reach out to me. I'm involved in many projects myself. Like I'm creating a huge multi-million-dollar app right now. And I'm involved in television, radio. I'm involved in books, like literature, like I'm writing books, and so like I'm doing everything because I don't want a language to die on my watch. Like I have this gift. Am I going to hoard it just for myself? You can't hoard knowledge. You're supposed to, if it's going to help the humanity, it's going to help, share your knowledge. Don't hoard it, share it. Whatever that can help another human being, help, share it. So anyway, if anyone wants to reach out to me, please add me up, and I would be honored to connect with anybody. And again, my name is Randy Morin. Pisimukani Poet is my spirit name. And yeah, if I have said anything to offend anybody, I apologize. But I think that's all I could say for now. Like I said, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. All I know is what I know in my heart, which is Tapwe Win, which is my truth. It's my truth, right? So with that, kinanas ko now. I thank each and every one of you, and take care. Ligasa.
Kathwa alap en shnuknukwa lilwat ulkan, statlim kan, ukwa mukan, Nis rini mutach vern en shlilil tama, Nis John Sky en kwatamcha, Nis zawat much mutach kwaz in shkoza. My name is Sandy Henry. My traditional name is Kazutash, given to me by my grandmother. My parents are Rini and Vern Wallace. And my husband is John Sky. That's his traditional name. His English name is Jeremy Henry, and my daughters are Zuatmuch and Schwaz, and their English names are Violet and Cadence. So how the Indigenous languages are being revitalized. So I was fortunate enough to do 3 years of the Mentor Apprentice program with First Peoples Cultural Council. So I got to spend a lot of time with my grandma, and I learned that way. So when you come out of the 3-year program, you should be about 70% fluent. But because of the pandemic, it made things a lot harder because of course, I wanted to keep her safe. And so getting her to understand Zoom or video call was kind of one of our things that kind of held us back a little bit. I did start meeting her outside on her porch. So that of course, at a safe distance. But the 1 year that we got to do everything completely and totally together and time spent together, it was a lot of not just language, but like the history of our family, where we grew up and where we came from. We actually went to the site where my great grandmother was born, and we were, as a people, relocated from there to where we are now. And so that's where my interest came, and everything for wanting to absorb as much as I can while I can. My ultimate goal was to be able to have my daughters converse with my grandma. If not converse, then just to understand what she is saying, and for them to be able to have a conversation with each other. My youngest daughter, she will answer me back. She knows what I'm saying to her. She'll answer me back in English, but I know that she knows what I'm saying. My oldest daughter, she will answer me in English because that colonial aspect has already been instilled into her. So I'm trying to take that back and have her understand that this is our language, this is who we are, this is where we've come from, and this is what our ancestors spoke. So that is my goal for as long as I can hold on to it. So like I said, I do teach primary grades. So that's some people call it K4, some call it nursery, some call it pre-K. So 4-year-olds up until grade 3. And I try to make games or songs that reach every type of learner. So we're not just writing it, we're not just singing it, we're not just doing games. We're trying to do all of it all together, all in one. So I've made games specifically for colors, specifically for animals, family members, and I base a lot of my teachings out of our essential learning outcomes, plus a few of the books that we have had published along the way. So they're not too advanced. So we have a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced, plus what we like to call alphabets and sounds. So I try to use those, but also when it comes for time of the year, we were also fortunate enough to have these two books made within our community. So one is called the Intlakman Calendar. So that one has what's in our area, the plants and medicines in our area. And so they have recipes and where you can pick them and how you make them and how you would put them away. So this one is small and pocket sized so that you can take it with you, and it's like made of like the plasticky paper or whatever. And then this one was made with one of our elders who's a herbologist as well. So this one has a little bit more of an in-depth, but it also has like the ecology of the habitat and like all of that kind of things. It's got the Latin names as well, but it's also got our language in there. So because of the pandemic, I wasn't allowed to bring things into the classroom, like toys and props and things like that for them to touch and feel. And so that was really hard on me. So I relied heavily on PowerPoints, but that also gave me a chance to expose our children to the written way of our language, because up until 2 years ago, they've never seen what our language is like written. Even though that's not a big deal, it exposes them, and I'm not expecting them to learn to write it or read it until they're in grade 3. So that's just the very beginning stages of that. So we're also trying to incorporate the Play Home app so that they have the device in front of them, or I'm still trying to learn how to do it so that I can mirror it, and then I would do the action, and then I asked them, well, what did I just do? What did they do? What did so and so do? And then they would answer me back in the language. So I didn't realize I had so much going on like all the time. When I meet with Lily, she always wonders how that I do these things, but I I do, because it's important. It's important for me to have that connection with my daughters to my grandma. And then when I bring my papa for rides, he tells me different place names. So that's a big part of where we are and who we come from, because he'll say, oh, this family hunted over here. This was their trap line over here. And up until recently, I had a very colonial way of thinking of how to do place names, because I thought, hey, let's put street signs up and put the place name there. And my grandma looked at me and she's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Because just where our original street, I guess, is, where we were relocated to, there's 10 different place names in that one area. So you can't just call the one street one name. It's the horses grazed here, or this is this person's house, this person's land, and so on and so forth. So that was like the biggest light bulb moment that I've had recently. Also taking, well, I'm also a part-time student, so I work full-time and I go to school part-time so that I can become a certified teacher, but I'm also making all of these things on my own. And then I've just recently been asked, why don't you make short videos or TikToks on learning the language? So that's also reaching another area. That makes me really nervous though, because some people have made comments on, oh, how you speak it, or this is how I was taught. From family to family, I've noticed that it the dialect is slightly different. So I have to get over that for myself to be able to put myself out so that people in my community can learn what their children are learning as well. So then that's not just my daughters being able to converse with my grandma or myself, but it's also the members in my community to be able to learn what I'm teaching their children. So I try to keep things really simple. So the way that my grandma puts it is, when I first started, I was crawling as a language learner. And now after our 3 years, I'm a toddler toddling along with our language. So I'm a real visual learner. So I like to have visuals, but I also like to have things that are hands-on. But I know that there are children who like to write things down. So at first I need to see it, then I need to write it down, and then I practice it over and over and over and over again. So that's kind of the process that I have for this. And so that's kind of how we're revitalizing our language. We also have night classes for adults, but it's kind of all over the place. I wish it was kind of in a more fluid movement for it to happen, I guess, more naturally rather than by a book. So we are quite resilient. I'm told that we're one of the bigger communities in BC. I haven't actually looked that up. I don't really know. That's just what I'm told. I just go by what I'm told, and I don't question the elders, basically. So we incorporate how we can incorporate emergency preparedness. It would be really nice if we had place names, like the pictures taken of the place names, like what grows there, what happens there, whose family traps or hunts or gathers there. That was kind of my main goal this school year. So like I said, where I grew up across what is now known as Leeltwat Street is or it used to be called Old Reserve, because that's where everyone grew up. So everyone's family is there. So I really wanted to incorporate that into my teaching. So they know that, so our village is in two parts. So we have a lower and upper. They know that the upper is Chatolo, but along the way, there's a whole bunch more place names. So I've done probably 15 place names this far into the school year. I want to do more, definitely, because I have every student in my class asking, well, what's it called where I'm from? What's the place name called where I am? So that's really piqued their interest into knowing this is where I live, and this is the traditional name for it, and this is what happens here. So I try take like the satellite image, also the map image, but I haven't gotten to the point where I've done actual pictures yet. For some places I have, for some places that I would either drive by or that are on my way to or from work, or if I actually remember on my way home from work, because like I said, I usually have quite a bit going on as well. But I'll take pictures of things that are there, like the landmarks or the buildings that are there, just so that they can connect the two, because like I said, I teach from 4 years old up until about 8 years old. So I try really hard to make sure that things are done in a way that they understand. And it's been quite unfortunate that just less than 2 months ago, I lost my really good friend, where we had a really good plan. So I was going to start here and she was going to continue on. So it's been quite a hard couple of months, and just trying to get myself back into going and making sure that the person who is going to fulfill her role is also has the same goals that we had, or at least similar, because the plan that we had, it's going to be amazing. So it's going to keep on, and we're sharing. And one of the other big things is making sure they know who their family is, so that they know who that they're related to and how to introduce themselves and their families, because some children are only children, some children are families of 7 or 8 still. So knowing how to introduce themselves and their families. And quite a few of our children don't have an Ukwamuk or an Ukwamuk name. So that's one of the biggest questions that they have is, how do I get a name? Who gives me a name? Do I ask for it or do I wait? So those are the kinds of conversations that I've had with my kids. And probably disaster recovery. We did emergency preparedness with Lily. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. And so we had this group of kids map out on our map what were our emergency exits for the upper village. We only really have one, and it goes over, we have to go over a bridge. So if something happens to that bridge, that's it. They're stuck up there until the bridge can be remade, unless you have a truck or a vehicle that's higher. On an ideal sunny day where there's no mud and no rain, can you go down the back road? So yeah, that was one of our things. Also preparing their homes and knowing where to meet and who to call, or if any kind of emergency happens. So one of the things that I kind of took away from that was I stopped putting my dog in a kennel at night, because if there was something to happen in the middle of the night, I'm going to go and save my children, of course. But if my dog is in their kennel and it's closed or locked, they will burn, or whatever happens in the house, that emergency is going on. So I don't do kennels anymore for my animals because of that, because that was my one big aha from that. And that's what I took away from it. And I try to share as much as I can when I can. I'm getting to the point where, like, one of the elders said, speak proudly and freely wherever you are. I'm getting to that point where I will yell across our gym, in open gym, to tell my children that it's time to go home. So I guess that's where I'm at. And I have so many more goals and dreams and wishes and things to do for myself and my community. And I still have a little bit more of schooling to go. But once I'm done, I probably actually won't know what to do with the free time that I have. So it'll probably focus more into language learning and teaching. And I have been in this language teaching role. This is my 2nd year now, and every day is something different, and I absolutely love it. I love my students. I love learning and teaching the language. And I was actually just talking to my mom, I think it was last night, about emergency preparedness and what I know. And she just happens to be a council member, and she's like, why don't I know this? And you're my own child. And I said, I have no idea. I went and I did a presentation somewhere, and she was proud of me and she thought it was cool, but she didn't actually ask me what I was presenting on. So now she's interested, and now things have started to move that way. So I think one of the preparedness type things that we've started doing around here in like Old Reserve, in our place of origins, we once a year we try to do like to burn the grass ahead of time, a prepared burn, so that it doesn't happen with somebody else doing it, so that the medicines and things like that can flourish that year. Sometimes somebody tries to do their own and then it just gets away, and then it puts so many families and houses in danger. So now they do it way ahead of time and at the appropriate time on an appropriate day, so that it's done safely and in a manner that's not scaring everybody. So I think that's probably about all I have to say. But yeah, thank you for having me, and yeah, feel free to ask me any questions if you have any. I guess I don't really know what to say from here, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy, for sharing your knowledge, and all to everyone else for sharing their knowledge. So Gwen Deloise and Alana Silaboy. Hi, my name is Alana Silaboy. I am Mi'kmaq, and I am from Sabiganegati First Nations here in the mainland part of Nova Scotia on the East Coast. So I think it's morning for everyone. It's quite late afternoon for me. So thanks for joining and staying online. My role, I work for the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. So we are a tribal council who serve all 8 mainland Mi'kmaq communities and here in Nova Scotia. And so with with our organization, we're quite large. When I first started, there was only 60 of us. Now we're reaching about 140. So our departments and our services and our programs for the communities are grown. When I first started, I was someone's assistant. And then I worked in the climate department, and then I worked with forestry and emergency preparedness and green communities. And our aquatics team, and I was kind of divided into everyone's different projects and programs. I was the community liaison. So what that entailed was, because I am a community member, I had the most knowledge of the communities, the people, the lands. A lot of my colleagues are non-Indigenous, so the responsibility of inclusion was put on me from a very early start here, which is not a bad thing. But it was challenging, but it was also it helped me grow, and it helped me learn a lot of knowledge and ways of knowing. The thing that I'm most proud of learning and being able to use is the concept of Etowaptamunk, which is two-eyed seeing. And this concept allows you, it was made by Elder Albert Marshall and his late wife, Merdina Marshall, with some colleagues from the Cape Breton University. This concept allows you to braid the two ways of knowing, so Indigenous knowledge and science. And you use one eye to see Indigenous knowledge and the other eye to use Western science. So my job is to make sure that we are respectfully incorporating Indigenous knowledge, whether it's language, stories, knowledge from elders, community members, or knowledge holders, into the education programs, services, and any outreach and engagement that we have for the communities. This is a very big task. It's hard when you are, I can't say alone, because I have a lot of individuals, elders, community members, knowledge holders that I utilize their knowledge to help gain my knowledge so that I can help our staff, help the communities. So it's almost like a full circle with my work. And so with the communities, or I'll start with myself. I know that some of the elders had talked about residential schools. And here, you know, Sabaganagity was one of the biggest residential schools on the East Coast here. A lot of my people went and suffered. My grandmother had went, and her two sisters and her brother. My mother spent 12 years there. My father went to the day school for about 8 years. And then last year I found out that I actually went to the Indian day school for my first year of primary. I'm only 37 years old, so that will put in perspective of, you know, it wasn't that long ago. And those effects are still alive, you know, those generational traumas and the effects of the residential school are alive and well today. And because of that, I'm not a fluent speaker, but I've pushed myself to learn, paying attention to, you know, when people are talking. I think my achievements are, you know, knowing when an elder is asking me where I'm from and who's my family, because, you know, that's what we do, right? We want to know who your family is and see if we're related. So I always ask elders if they need tea or if they're hungry. So knowing that I've learned these things, you know, in an adulthood when I should have known those when I was younger. So my grandmother was a language teacher. She was forced not to teach, but she hid her teachings in the communities, and you know, it was kind of an underground language teacher. And then she became, you know, once things were allowed, and I might have been a little bit of tokenism, but my grandmother was able to teach, you know, but you know, when you have something like that, you have to take the good with the bad. So, you know, she focused on, you know, this is an opportunity to keep the language alive. My father, he can speak Mi'kmaq very well. He can understand it. He's very, very fluent. He can't read or write it though. The reading and writing part of our language is very colonial. You know, we didn't write our language until contact. Even I have a book here. This book is oh, you can't see it because I'm kind of blurred. But this book is it was made by a priest and a Mi'kmaq person. So it's not even true. You know, we had to make our language. There's even words today, like a lot of the colleagues are like, oh, what's this word in Mi'kmaq? And I'm like, there's no word for that. You know, that's a modern thing, or that's, you know, that's a species that doesn't belong here. So yeah, so we have that. And so that's, my dad can't read or write Mi'kmaq, but he can speak it like you couldn't believe. And he taught me as much as he could when we were younger. My dad worked 3 jobs just to provide for us, because it was myself and my 4 brothers and sisters and my mom. And then myself, I'm not fluent at all, but I know commands, I know species, I know greetings, and you know, some of the things. I can ask people questions, and you know, I can get my kids to stop in my language, or ask them where they're going or how they are. And my kids are very, my 2 younger ones, I have 3 children. I said 14, a 10, and a 3-year-old. And you know, it's cute to hear my daughter talk. She's only almost 3, and you know, she knows some Mi'kmaq words, and you know, we're teaching her the language with the things around us, and we've tried to focus on species or things, you know, like milk, or you know, come here, or go away, or right now. It's really cute sometimes when she speaks it. And my son is trying to learn. So, but, you know, and then that comes to the point of, you know, how the Indigenous language are being revitalized across communities. We have a lot, we have almost like a school board for Mi'kmaq, and they work really hard to come up with ways to teach and, you know, and how to revitalize the language. You know, it's really great for the schools in communities. You know, they have Mi'kmaq language as you learn it. Like even my daughter, she's 14. When we were in community and she was going to school in community, she her first 2 years of school, she knew more Mi'kmaq than I did. You know, because she learned it. It was an everyday thing and it was a practice. But we moved off reserve, or she was going off school off reserve, and you know, she lost that, and it's sad, but you know, her willingness to want to learn again is there. But our communities are working really hard, and they're working together to revitalize the language. We have apps on the phone because they wanted to make sure that they were using, you know, everyone has a phone in their hand every day, right? So what better way to take advantage of that is to, you know, let's make an app for it. That's the new thing, right? You make an app for it. So the app, it's great because they're categorized by, you know, there's greetings and trees and species and commands and directions, nature. And you click on it, and you not only see the word, but you hear it. So when you click on it, it's a person, an actual person saying that, so you can hear it, because our people have been oral learners and oral, you know, we pass down our traditions orally. And, you know, like myself and my son, I'll have a hard time reading the Mi'kmaq word, but if somebody said something in Mi'kmaq, I'd pick it up a lot faster. My son is the same way. So that helps with, you know, different types of learning. So, and there's an app for older kids, and they now just developed an app for younger kids. So it's easier for them as well, because they realized, you know, learning as an adult is a lot harder than learning as a child. So a lot of the programs, you know, brought by MK, they focus on, you know, early years to grade 12. So they're good. My daughter went to a language class or a language camp this summer, and they gave them these books, and it's The Forgotten Language. Oh, sorry, I'm kind of. And in these things, it talks about Mi'kmaq, and it talks about, you know, what our language is, who's revitalizing it, and then you get into how you're going to learn it. Oh, sorry. So there's the category is food, and so they have a picture with the English word and the Mi'kmaq word, right? Because it goes back to what Sandy was saying about, you know, everyone's different when they're learning, and we all learn different. Some of us are visual, some of us are listeners, and some of us have to do all of it for it to kind of stick. So it's great, you know, you see all of the pictures, you know. I know this one, it's a bit away, but it's great for people. The sugar sisamogan. It's great for people to see this, right? Like, I know this is milk and it's malugich. I don't even have to look at it, but it's great for someone like my child to learn. So they have a couple of series of books that they have out that have different, again, like this one is species and places. And then they have this great little cue cards almost. Sorry, my blurriness is. So they have like cue cards. So again, pictures. And these ones also have, you know, when it's a singular form or an animate object. So these are really good for young learners. So there's lots. So and my role, my job is to, you know, go back to that Edooptimunk and that Tued seeing, and making sure that, you know, we're taking these, because a lot of people look at me and be like, oh, Alana, what's this? What's the Mi'kmaq word for this? And I feel ashamed that I don't know that. And I have to look it up. I get my lexicon out or my app, or, you know, look at my books. And I should know that. Sorry, the sun. And I should know that, and I feel shamed, but you know, it's not my fault. I always had a willingness to learn. You know, residential school and colonization has took a huge toll on the language and the culture within my region and many regions across North America and Canada. So it's, you know, but my job also allows me to learn my language. I have the opportunity. We have an in-house speaker teacher, a Mi'kmaq speaker and a teacher, and he hosts Mi'kmaq classes every Tuesday for 2 hours. So, you know, and he makes us work, like he makes us do homework, and, you know, he calls us on the spot. So it's like, you know, he's really pushing us there to learn. You know, and I try to use it in my everyday, you know, because you have to use it every day. Because I'm a believer, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And, you know, even if it's small words and small commands, you can do that. My role in the language, and how we're incorporating that more, and, you know, getting away from having two sets of everything. You know, before we used to say, okay, we're gonna have an English poster and then we'll do the Mi'kmaq poster. And now you know, and even with our magnets, I'm like, you know what, we're gonna split it. You know, you're gonna have one picture, one poster, and you're gonna have the Mi'kmaq word with the English word, and they're gonna be side by side. Because for someone like me, who isn't fluent, you know, that helps. So I know that word means that word. So, you know, making sure that they're treated equal, because, you know, a lot of our biologists and scientists are putting things, you know, on front and back, and you'd have to sit there all day flipping it to read the English and the Mi'kmaq. So, you know, making sure that our language is being respected and equal to English is one of my duties. And I get the great opportunity to learn more and more of our language through our work. And then as I learn, I can teach and, you know, teach others in our communities, because our programs and services are for the communities. And then I just wanted to make sure I was answering your questions too, Lily. So I'm just going back to your questions that you posted. Yeah, I think that, you know, if we had the programs and services around language that we have now, and if we had them when I was younger, I think I'd be a lot more fluent. But, you know, it's not about me. It's about the future. It's about our children, you know, because they're going to be the next, you know, knowledge holders and elders. And if we can, you know, stop the patterns of colonization at my level and revitalize the languages and the culture into the children and the youth, you know, we've done our jobs. I don't want to take up too much more time. And then how Indigenous language can be incorporated in emergency preparedness and disaster recovery. That's a huge question. And, you know, it could be a lot of things. You know, there's some of our elders who are still here who, you know, we need to make sure that we're able to talk to them if there was an emergency. If we had to evacuate them, we have to make sure that we speak to them in Mi'kmaq. You know, in the work that we do, we offer translators as well. So, you know, making sure that we're being aware of the communities and their members' needs. You know, having posters in Mi'kmaq and in English, are helpful, especially with this pandemic. Like there was a huge need for, wearing your mask and washing your hand signs, but for Mi'kmaq. And, people were coming at myself and my colleague Amber to, get these signs out and into the community. It's, because there's the older generation still speaking, and it's just teaching the younger generations as well. And I think the language, if we're going back, and you're talking about, if your power is cut off, or your roadways are cut off, and there's an opportunity there to learn and share, and use the language. Something to do in a disaster. It gives you hope, and gives you something to relieve your anxiety or your worries, if you're able to do that. It's hard to talk about how the Indigenous language can be incorporated through the emergency preparedness and disaster recovery, because of a lot of the things that are happening in the world now with the lands and the waters. It's because of colonization. It's because of overusing and overtaking from our Mother Earth. And that's her way of speaking to us. Enough is enough. And maybe it's not us to speak, it's her. It's Mother Nature and Mother Earth that are saying enough is enough. And I think that, that's something that needs to be taught, or even just listen to, that our Earth and Mother Nature are speaking to us, and they're angry, and they had enough overtaking, and enough this and enough that. And I think that speaks a lot. And I don't want to take up too much time. I it's supper time here, and I have children, but I do want to read a poem from her name is Rita Jo, and she was in the residential school for a really long time, and she was a poet and a writer. You can buy her book. You can buy it at Kohl's, which is nice because I never had that growing up. Everything is great. I've been taking full advantage of all of the books and the apps and everything that's available. So that's Rita Jo's book there, The Songs of Rita Jo. Sorry, my blurriness. But she was a poet, and she spent a lot of time in the residential school. And her poem is about our language. So I want to leave everyone here today with this poem. It's called I Lost My Talk by Rita Jo. I lost my talk, the talk you took away when I was a little girl at the Shubenacadie school. You snatched it away. I speak like you. I think like you. I create like you. I scrambled, ballad about a word, my word. Two ways I talk, both ways I say. Your way is more powerful. So gentle, I offer my hand and ask, let me find my talk so I can teach you about me.
I'd just like to say big miigwech to everyone that shared, and especially because Matagami is we're very early on in revitalizing our language, and it's really nice to hear the initiatives like the mentorship or apprenticeship program. Like there's something like that, like those things are what we need to start implementing in our communities if we want to really revitalize the language. And then just teaching through the various ways, like using technology. It's utilized by everyone now, and it's a perfect thing to try to capture and revitalize our language with. But yeah, it's just a big miigwech to everyone. It was really nice to see you, especially on today. Thank you, Lily, for organizing, and I hope everyone has a good day.
Yes, hello everyone. Lily, it's been a while. Always good to see you. Very interesting session. Yeah, so the revitalization of Indigenous language is, I think that's, as everybody points out, very important. We only have so many of them, and a lot of them are on the far end of the scale for becoming obsolete. So everything we do to try and keep them alive, everything counts, no matter how small. Everything counts. So so I'm relearning my own language too. And the Grand Chief here and the director of the Cultural Center just signed a multi-million-dollar agreement with Minister Mark Miller for a full-service cultural center, and they have a well-established language revitalization program that is available to the community, and it's incredibly hard to get into because the program is so good that everybody wants to take it. And it's I believe it's a 3-year program, and as the young woman said earlier, you come out not fully fluent, but you're about 75%. So you come out with a lot more learning than you went into with. So this is an important step for this community, as there's in this community, there's only a handful of first language speakers left, and everybody else is second language speakers because we're relearning our own language, as was pointed out, due to colonialism. And everybody's first language is English, and then we learn French, and then we learn Mohawk. So every little thing you do counts. So they have a well-stocked, I guess, a little bookstore in the cultural center here, and there's all sorts of materials from beginner to more advanced. And I'm lucky enough that all of the women in my mother's family and all of her sisters, starting with my grandmother, were all teachers. And for the longest time, I didn't want to become a teacher because everybody in my family is a teacher, and I just didn't want to do that. And then, as you know, Lily, here I am teaching all over the place about all kinds of things. So I couldn't help it. It's just in my blood. And but the one thing I can't teach yet is my own language. So I'm, like, as I mentioned, I'm a second language learner now. But yeah, very important. And as was pointed out, there's lots of different dialects for Mohawk. And as you go across west towards the Senecas, you can hear it's still the same language, but the dialect is different. So it sounds different, but it really isn't that far apart from the languages in the East. But when it comes to language, it's not just learning the language and learning how to speak the language, but the transfer of language is a cultural thing. And at one point during the stay of the evacuees from the 2011 floods in Manitoba, they wanted to continue their cultural practices, and one of them was hunting. And at that time, they were hunting for geese. And I had to convince Indigenous Services, who I was working for at the time, that you have to allow them to go back to their hunting grounds, because it's not just the men that are going, but they're bringing their sons. The uncles are teaching. There's a language transfer there. So the language is tied to the land intimately. Everything we do is tied to the land, and everything we talk about is from the land. So they were trying to figure out how they could do it. And I said, just put some money aside and bring an airplane in, bring them home. They're gone for 2 weeks. They dress their kills, they store them, and then they come back because they're not allowed to stay because they're still in evacuation mode. But I had to explain to them that there's cultural things that are happening when they go out to hunt that you can't stop from happening because your mandate says to help them develop. Now the older men are helping the younger men understand the language and what it means when they're out hunting, and they learn all these new things, and they absorb the concept, and the language becomes embedded in their mind, in their brain. And you can't stop that from happening. You have to let that happen because that's how the language is transferred. And they couldn't understand it, but they did end up allowing them to go. So there's things like that that happen in ceremony, in our day-to-day living. And when you're constantly talking with people who are teaching you the language, there's an inherent transfer there that's not readily apparent. You have to think about it to absorb the concept and to understand what they're talking about, because initially they're not drawing pictures for you. You're not learning it out of a book. You have to absorb the abstract concept first before you understand what the language is about. And it's all intimately tied to your environment. You can't stop that from happening. That's the way it has to happen. Anyways, that was just a little story I wanted to share with you. You might have heard that before, Lily.
So my name is Santana. Like I said earlier, if anyone missed it, I'm a cultural liaison advisor with Progressive Housing Society. It's one of the only nonprofit housing companies in Burnaby, but also within the Lower Mainland. And I think everyone knows how the housing market is in British Columbia. So I take the work very seriously. I just want to thank everybody. I'm one of the only Indigenous staff. So when I'm able to gather in places like this, it's really dear to my heart. Both of my parents went to residential and day school, so I don't really speak my language. And I think I find myself so busy in a lot of different projects, whether that's like my education or work, that I kind of put that on the back burner. So this has been a really big refresher and kind of motivator for me to get more in touch with my language. I'm Soto, so it's kind of one of the smaller tribes within the prairies. I think we have about 12 communities. So within the prairies, like we don't really have Soto classes at our universities or anything like that, whereas Cree and other tribes do. So there's actually a book on Nakaway language that I saw, and this kind of like motivated me, like I need to buy that book and get started. My dad was fluent in Nakaway when he was a child, but then he lost that in day school, and he's actually been able to teach himself. So my dad is a huge inspiration to me, and if he can do it and everyone here can do it, I can definitely do it. So thank you all, and I'm excited to hopefully attend more sessions in the future.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I am so grateful for all of the sharings. They're very deep felt and personal experiences, and I just feel like it was such a gift for me to be here and to be able to listen to everything that you had to say. And I just want to really let you know that it's a very emotional experience for me to hear all the stories, and they are so important in expressing how life has been over all of these decades and so many, so many years of trauma and everything. And I feel it's a gift for me to learn. And, I've tried my best to be open, and I have come across friends of mine that are very closed-minded about a lot of things. And I'm very patient with them, even though they might come across as being racist or not understanding. And I feel like that in itself has actually helped to not change people's minds, but get them in a mindset that is more open and understanding of people, humans, and I feel like that one of the most important things that I've learned through all of the story sharing and the experiences that have been shared with me is calling people in rather than calling them out. And I just feel like there's just a way that has been put into me now. I feel like I am being able to share and be part of how things are expressed. I just want to say thank you all very much, and I'm sending all of my love.
I really appreciate all the sharing that's going on, and just to add, like everything that everybody's doing is really awesome. So we heard like from the beginning with Mary how important it is to connect to the land, and then we hear the younger folks about how we're using other kinds of media to share. At one time, I heard stories about being captured on picture, that the camera will steal your spirit kind of thing. So I come from that kind of place to letting go and sharing where we can reach people. And the reason I shifted that is because we have a whole lot of healing to do at the same time. We have lots of hurt and stuff on top. Life in general already without that stuff is hard enough to live. But yet we have all this history we still need to heal. But everything can be done at the same time. So I don't know what I would recommend. There's no like linear thing, but what everybody is doing is great. So the song I sang initially, and to talk about like like your gifts. So in terms of recommendations, I don't know what I would recommend to you, but I could tell you what I'm doing. But anything that you do to help with language really supports. When I think about children, helping them feel good about who they are. Once they know that, however, even if it's spoken in English, once they know about who they are, they can take on the challenges of life. They can take on healing our history. But we too need a lot of healing. So for me, I'm lucky to be involved in work called Returning to Spirit. So I got to put the plug because I do a little bit of traveling, and I see it because I've traveled to a lot of your lands. I've traveled to BC. I've traveled to the east, and had people experience like being at peace with what's happened with our history. And it was kind of focused around residential school or the impacts of that, like the abuse, physical, all the abuses that happen. And still today, we're still faced with these new hurts of the children being discovered. So how are we going to move forward in that? So we have to keep finding ways to keep moving forward. As much as there's sadness in that, when we move forward or find a way to stand in our gift, we're automatically honoring those people who didn't have a chance to share the language, people who didn't have a chance to heal from the hurts that they experienced. When you do something, so I would say, what are you going to do? And what you're going to do in terms of that is going to be beautiful, no matter how it is, because it comes from you, from your passion. The other part I would say about that is that you never have to do anything alone. So this is why I enjoy coming together with people like the guy, I think it was Randy that spoke, like, don't do things alone. You don't have to do things alone. All your dreams and passions, and I can't cite all these stories that I've heard in my time, but that anything you want to do, great. Everything that's going to stop you is going to come forward right away. And just know that you can reach out to people. A lot of people have similar passion or dreams, and you can make it happen together, even if they're not Indigenous. So anyways, there's lots happening here for me beyond what I ever dreamed. Even having this Zoom meeting and getting to meet people from right across the country, it's very special. And as soon as you're going to have conversation around language, and especially with emergency preparedness, it's always being mindful of our history, also, and handling it in the present moment, but also feeling good about what we need to do in the future, and that it's ours to to hold or to alter whatever way we want to draw our own kind of future, and just keeping it wide open and shooting for the stars. So this is what I experienced not long ago, because I was coming from a place of loss and hurt, anger, even hate, that I needed to really shift out of my space, because that's not who we are, and that's not going to serve anybody. So anyway, miigwech, I'll see you all again soon, I hope.
Well, in my language, when we part, we don't say goodbye. There is no such word, because that would mean that's it. So we say haubolagut, which means be healthy and whole, the actual translation. So that's what I wish to all of you, to be healthy and whole. Whatever today brings, and whatever freshet and forest fires, whatever the season is ahead of us, I'm wishing you all health.